Hello, and welcome to the latest installment in our UX/CX online series. I hope you're as excited as I am for the talks that we have today. But before we get into those, I want to give a really quick introduction to UX/CX and why we run these sessions. So at UX/CX, we have this mission or motto that the world is full of bad software. And what I mean by that is not buggy software or software that doesn't work, but software that's not great to use. And I always use the example of banking, because I'm with one of those digital first banks as well as a very traditional bank, and their apps are a million miles apart. And even though technically they do the same features, I know which one I'll reach for because it's so much easier to get through the security flows and the user flows on that app. And what we say is that we want to help companies build an environment that can't build bad software. Because I don't think it's down to the skills and it's not down to the motivation of the people working in those companies, but it's the systems that they're forced to work within that ends up with these kind of siloed, clunky systems. And how we go about doing that is we say we want to shift from projects where you've got this business case that's been signed off months, even years ahead of plan, that's locked in a solution, and move away from that to truly autonomous empowered product teams where teams can iterate and really work with customers to find out what works best for them. Now, that's really easy to say and really hard to do in practice. And that's where the talks come in. So we're asking people not to explain how they're reinventing their whole process, but how they're improving their part of the process. And hopefully you can learn something as you're listening to these talks. And we do have time for questions at the end of each talk. So please do think through any questions that you might have and write them in which platform you're watching this on. And I'll put those questions through to our speakers. But that's enough for me. I'd like to introduce our first speaker for this evening, which is Julianna Goodman, who's the Brand Design and UX Director at SAS. And Julianna will be talking about the neuroscience of attention in AI-driven UX. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I'd like to welcome Julianna to the stage. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well, and thank you so much for being here today. I know we all have a lot on our mind, and so let's ease in with something very simple. Let me start with a question. Why do people sometimes hesitate before making a simple decision? It sounds small, right? But it happens all the time. Let me give you an example. Have you ever sat down at a restaurant table, you open out a menu and realize that there were just too many options? You scan it once, then again, and then reread the first thing you saw again. And after a minute, you are not excited anymore. You just, you're tired. So what do? You order the same thing you always do again. This tiny moment of hesitation, that pause before we decide, is actually where design lives, and it's something that I am very passionate about, and I spend a lot of time thinking about that. By the way, I'm Julianna Goodman, and I lead design strategy. In my work, I pay a lot of close attention to those tiny little pause in our digital experience, the moment where someone hesitate instead of moving forward, because that hesitation doesn't just happen with the restaurant menu. It happened in our digital platform today, and that's why it brings us here today, to today's talk. Today's talk. So now let's bring this moment into the digital experience. Think about what happened when someone opened out a website today. There are navigation across the top, a bold headline, multiple call to action, maybe a pop-out appears, maybe a chat starting blinking in the corner. Every moment is technically very helpful. I'm sure there's good reason for all putting in there, but none of those things are really wrong, even individually. But everything asks for attention at the same time. Nothing become clear. So your brain receive 11 bits of information every second through your sense, but consciously you can only process about 40 bits of them. So attention isn't really limited. It is a scarce resources. Just think about the ratio for a moment. When someone open your digital experience, the brain immediately start filtering like what matters, what can be ignored, and what feels safe to click. And when there is too much to sort through, people hesitate, they freeze, they abandon the task. And here's the interesting twist: we all think that AI was supposed to come to help us to solve this problem. But let's be honest here, many AI interfaces are actually making problem worse. You have more content, more suggestion, and more decision to make. So today, before we go further, let's quickly share what we explore, what we will explore today. First, we will start with how brain actually filter information. Second, we'll explore why humans trust some AI system and hesitate with others. The reaction isn't random. That's the reason behind it. And third, I will share the three design principles for working with attention. And finally, I will show you a real co-pilot project where we apply these ideas. Um, Let me give you a simple example of attention work. Imagine, I don't know how many of you are parents here, but imagine a parent sleeping through the night. They might have some traffic outside, a door closing somewhere in your house, maybe the heater turned on. All of those sounds are happening at the same time, and yet parents slept through it. Now imagine when a baby make a small cry, suddenly parents woke up instantly. What interesting is the brain was actually hearing all those sounds that I mentioned earlier entire time, but most of them would just get filtered out because baby cry is a signal the brain that has to learn not to ignore. And this is where our common understanding of attention is a little bit misleading. We all thought that, describe attention as a spotlight, but neuroscience shows something different. Your brain is constantly filtering information. Only that signal are meaningful and relevant to get through. Good design help the right signal to pass through the filter, and this matter a lot for digital design. Attention isn't about what we control, but it's something that the brain automatically protect, because every screen we create, every notification, every headline, every AI suggestion is really trying to pass through that filter. And that's great, right? But when everything happen at the same time, they start to compete with each other. Now our brain like overwhelmed, and then we just block everything out. So remember, good design isn't about adding more signal. It is helping the right signal to go through the filter. But attention is just part of the story. There are another process happening in our brain at the same time. What it is trust, right? Trust is not just how we feel it. It's actually biological. There are two parts of our brain doing this process. One part is called the amygdala, constantly scan through the threat and uncertainty. And then at the same time, another part of our brain is the prefrontal cortex evaluates something that isn't reliable. So every interaction go through this very quick internal check. We will ask your brain ask a question: does it make sense? Is it safe to act on? When system feel clear and consistent, the brain relaxes it. But when something feel like a black box, the brain become very cautious. So that's when the hesitation came in, right? We took a moment to make a decision. Just remember, our brain really doesn't like to act things that we don't understand. So this is exactly the challenge with AI. If people want to trust AI system, we have to design experience that reduce that uncertainty. So how now we understand a bit about how the brain filter information and how trust work. The real question now become, how do we design AI that works with the brain, not against it? In our project, our project, the three practical principles start to become our north star. They help guide how we design AI experience. First, we reduce cognitive load because brain is already filtering a huge amount of information. Second, we build trust through the transparency, so system feel understandable rather than a black box. And third, we keep human in control. Remember, because AI should just support the people. It should not replace the judgment. Now, principle might sound a little bit simple here, but they become very powerful once we start applying them to a real product. So let me show you how they play out in our co-pilot project uh, that our team is working on today. This is a web co-pilot project. Before we get into all that stuff, we start looking at our help ecosystem on our website. We notice something that is so important. User already have so many way of getting help, right? They could search, they could browse, oh sorry, they could browse documentation, they could read FAQ, and they could even contact us or connect with our live support. Each option was designed to help, but when all of them appear at the same time, something else happened. Your brain cannot decide, and your brain is asking is, oh, where should I start? When people are presented too many entry point, the brain doesn't become more efficient. It experience decision friction. People hesitate, they pause, sometimes they abandon all the tasks together. And then we face the real challenge. We were about to introduce, this is a challenge we are facing. We are now about to introduce the AI co-pilot into our system. And it's not simply, just adding something in the page. We actually when we do that, we just actually make the system more confusing than ever. So what we do also too is, as we explore all this problem that we have, we realize something that is very important. It's not about adding a AI co-pilot. Maybe it is really where co-pilot should live in that experience. On marketing side, people still exploring. They learning about the possibility. In this context, AI should able to, can support the discovery, and but it's not necessary the main entry, right? It can be in the corner, in the bottom, or the right hand side. It's just the standard, the practice with, a lot of company, our competitor. But inside the platform, the situation is a little bit different. User are already working, they are already trying to complete a task. And when someone gets stuck in the middle of a task, they usually have a simple question. So how do I do this? This moment when help matter the most, right here. So placing Copilot directly in the working environment means guidance appear exactly where the question happened, right? So on the marketing side, AI support exploration, but inside the platform, it support execution. And the execution is where people need help the most, which led us a key design question. Not just should we add a Copilot, but is where should it live? Then, so the very first principle I kind of mentioned in the previous slide is, the first principle we focused was reducing cognitive load. Earlier, we talked about how brain works more like a filter than a spotlight. So as a designer, our job is to really try to support that filtering process by really showing people only what they need and when they need it. If you look at the screen here, when the user asks question, the co-pilots and it's give a easy to read and clear answer first. That's just the key steps, right? Nothing extra. Then when the user want more context, they can actually click on the detail, and now the explanation appear. So the interface stay clean and focused, while detailed information is still available for someone to who actually need it and want to get more information. We also use a visual hierarchy to guide attention, making sure that the answer is more prominent thing on the screen. We want to keep interaction pattern consistent. Why? Whenever if we introduce an interface that behave very differently, now we are asking user to rebuild their mental model, and that takes effort. We burn a lot of their brain calorie. That is our cognitive load. So unless you have a very good reason, don't make our brain work harder than it need to be. The second principle is building trust to transparency. Earlier we talked about how brain react when something feel like a black box, right? So in this experience, when user expand the detail, we don't just show more information. So we show how where do we find this answer, how this answer got generated. So what we do, we provide the source behind the recommendation so that user can see exactly what the information come from. And then we also incorporate the system confidence level that tell user how certain this AI about of the answer, right? Of course, if number is high, we tend to be like, okay, this probably a good resources that I can use. Then and third, you tell about why this recommendation. This is real reasoning before, behind the recommendation, and this matter because our brain constantly, evaluated the uncertainty. When AI feel like a black box, people hesitate. But when reasoning becomes so visible and available for people, the system become more understandable. That's what we build the trust. We start from transparency. The third principle is keeping human in control. A very helpful way to think about this is AI should act as a co-pilot, not a autopilot. Our goal isn't placing human intelligence, but is really augmented, right? So what does this look like in practice? The user can take initiative for important action, but AI, you can suggest, they can guide, they can offer recommendation, but never force decision. It never take controls. A simple way of thinking about this is AI suggests and human decide. And this is just as important because people still want to be in control. People want to have the ability to undo, to refine, or to reject the some of the AI proposal. Because the moment someone get you want to make sure that the more people don't get feel trapped by the AI decision, because when that happened, that's when we lost trust. So always give people the escape hatch, always give them the control, just like a real cockpit. The pilot is still flying the planes, right? Then with everything that we experience, so we take a step back and really look at the system as a whole. We realize that something is important. The goal again is not just to add another help option. The goal was simply just to simplify how we help people, instead of asking user to choose between multiple paths, right? Like the search that you've seen earlier, the documentation, the FAQ, or support, or even live agent. We make the copilot as a starting point. Now when someone needs help, the copilot become the guide, and it can answer simple question directly. When of course when people need more help, we route user to the right place. So instead of navigating the help ecosystem on their own, we create a system that help them to find the right path, and then that faster to get their task done. As this matter because the brain again, but our brain is consistently filtering what is important to us. So by creating one entry point, we reduce decision friction and make sure that we get help, simplify and make it more intuitive. So if there's one idea I would like to leave you today is designing AI experience is really not just making the system more intelligent, but it's really designing for how people think, because eventually people are the people who use the system. The brain is constantly filtering all the signal for relevance and safety and control, and we want to keep that in mind when we reduce cognitive load, when we make system transparent, and we keep human in control. AI will stop feeling like a black box. AI start with, we can treat them as a trust partner, and in a way that will bring us back, like I mentioned earlier in the talk, like how the restaurant menu is, good design really don't want to overwhelm people with more option. It helps them to see the right choice clearly, and it's then, the real goal for designing AI is for the human brain. And thank you.
Excellent. That was really, really interesting case study. I love the way you kind of took us through almost like an evolution of
Yeah.
kind of chatbots through it as well, because I know, and I'm sure a lot of other people out there are the same. When I encounter a chatbot, my first instinct is to write talk to person,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they've been so poor in the past.
Yes, there are so many factor we need to consider. And one thing I felt like a lot of time we are trying to be useful, but we have to make sure that be useful in a way that we actually help instead of confusing people, right? And the search and all this FAQ on contact, because we are trying to handhold our user, but we forgot we are living in a tech savvy world. Sometimes you don't have budget to do research, but to me, I think to create a best UX is really honed into how people think. You will never be wrong, because if you interview 5 people, they probably have all 5 different answers. But when you start reading about how brain act and works, I think you will get more accurate answer.
Excellent. I have two completely polar opposite questions coming out of your talk. So I'm going to start with one, because I loved your example of the website, and it's so standard now. You've got your banner, you've
Yeah.
got your call to action, you've got your chatbot, you've got all that.
Yeah.
When you were explaining that, the first thing that jumped into my head was that study a few years back where they were saying if you make your text hard to read, so if you intentionally add friction,
Yes.
it actually makes people, because as you were saying, the amygdala goes, ooh, this is something I'm not expecting. Because if it's something you're expecting, you just brush right past it.
Yeah.
So is there a lesson there that we can learn, that maybe doing something, instead of trying to make it smooth and instead of
Yeah.
trying to make it as easy as possible, is there a lesson in adding friction?
Yeah, next talk. I'm pretty sure, because like you say, a lot of time when people say, hey, I want to call attention, very quickly they think about surfaces instead of putting it back in the background, right? And then when you have so much messaging that you want to put it out there, everything is important. If you have different stakeholder, everything is important. But now, what is the most important thing? You don't want to, you don't want to say, hey, I know this button is important, and then when you go back to other people, you say, I know this button is important, and then what do you handle? So the best way for me, I usually is pull it back. I'm gonna pull you guys back and let the user give the space for people to breathe and to digest. That's why very famous when people say, if you cannot think about anything, go have a walk. That's when you give space. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
And sorry, I forgot to mention to everybody watching, because I can see there's quite a few people online watching, please write in whatever questions you have, and Julianna will be happy to answer them. But I'm going to jump to my opposite question now.
Okay.
And I love the way, like, I love the confidence kind of rating, because that just gives that's the biggest fear. It's always the whole like, has this just hallucinated or is this actually real? But just to your point of people still wanted control.
Yeah.
That you were saying that, okay, we're going to give them the information, but they're still the driver. They're still the one who's taking the action.
Yep.
I have noticed, and I'm going to take the analogy of coding, in the past 3 months, it has shifted. I would say in the programming space, where people don't want to do any of the coding. They want, and Claude Code has this dual mode where it has planning and then it has actions.
Yeah.
So you get the plan, it tells you this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And people review it and go, yeah, happy with that.
Yeah.
And then it goes and does it. Do you see that similar kind of evolution happening in maybe chatbot space, or kind of, I'd say chatbot's not the right word, but like a helper on the website or on the application?
Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna that is like, I mean, you know, for right now, again, what I'm talking today is what I'm seeing is more like in the next 2 years, because AI is not as robust as we think yet, right? But the next 2 years, everything is gonna change. AI will be more robust than ever, and by the time our brain is also very lazy sometimes also too. We have lazy brain, it's just human being. But by the time when AI becomes so robust, are we, this is a question I always ask, like, are we going to let AI make decision for us? Because right now we let AI to do competitor study, let AI to analysis, right? And what happened down the road? Go back to your code, your coding, like, you know, like using AI for the code. But I think one thing that I always, you know, would ask developer is like, yes, you get all this code and from AI, but are those code more lines than what you can do? When you add more lines to the code, you affect your performance on your site. But is that what you really want? So a lot of time I would encourage developer to go back and, like, you know, just double check. It's very important we double check to make sure that AI is speeding out a lot of, you know, accurate. You know that. I mean, sometimes you think using AI is simplify a lot of stuff, but it's not. If you really pay attention, you're just like, oh, that's not right, you know. And one other thing that I think is very useful is, if you really use AI to help with your work, please use multiple tools, multiple channel to cross checking, because if not, we're gonna so that's yeah.
I've definitely found that I do OpenAI and Claude, and I have them kind of sanity check each other's work, and always find improvements. So it's
right.
And do you think longer term, like, so I assume you're using one of the big models under the hood for your chatbot there.
Yep.
Do you think longer term, these agent kind of things, like, as you said, it's maybe 2 years down the road, but is that something that every company is going to program their own version with all of their context of their application or something like that? Or do you think the models are going to just become this open claw helper who can do anything?
Yes, I do see it. Even if, like, with our company, we do allow this. You know, there are two versions of Copilot. Some is like a basic standard one, and the other one is more advanced and robust one. We allow employee to create their own agent. So it's going to be, you know, I would not say that it's going to take over people, because human is mainly the boss of this. So
Human is accountable always. You can't.
right, it is, and sometimes it drives me a little bit crazy when I hear people say that, oh yeah, it's gonna take over your job. I'm like, no, that's not true. Only you let them do it. You don't, right? Because human intelligence, I don't think anything can replace that. And we are different. And AI, it just to me, we keep feeding AI. You know, it's not you know, it's not coming from them originally, right? It's the code that you put in there to create this agent. I do see that it's gonna be really use it wise, like, you know, broadly. I'm worried because I'm looking into all this icon that we have to design for this agent, and we have 14,000 people. I mean, am I gonna see 14,000 of different AI icon? No. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. So yeah, I think that brings us actually to time, but I really enjoyed the case study. I thought it was brilliant, kind of outlining how it's actually working in practice today and solving some of those confidence issues and things like that. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent.
Thank
That brings us to our second talk for this evening. So up next, we have Nihal Kaul, who's the lead software engineer at Revscale AI. And Nihal will be talking about the new user is an agent, rethinking product design for human and AI collaboration. So this is kind of almost a continuation of what we've been talking about. So I'd like to welcome Nihal to the stage. Over to you.
Hey everyone. Thanks, Rory. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. Um, hey everyone. Thanks for joining. Before I introduce myself, I wanted to start with a question that has been on my mind a lot lately. So think about the last product you shipped. Think about the user research you did, the personas you built, the onboarding flows you designed, and now ask yourself, did any of that work account for a user that never sees your interface? Because that is the reality we are heading into, and for a lot of products it is already here. We are entering a world where the user on the other end of a product might be a person or an agent, or both working together. And the uncomfortable truth is that most of our products were never designed for this. Our UX patterns assume someone is looking at the screen, our metrics assume a human is generating the signal, our onboarding assumes someone who learns the way people learn. When agents show up in your product and they already have, they break those assumptions. They skip your onboarding, they fail silently inside of filing support tickets, they distort your analytics without you even knowing. And here is a number that puts it in perspective. In 2024, bot traffic surpassed human traffic on the web for the first time, and 51% of all web requests are now automated. So the question is not whether your product needs to work for agents, but the question is whether you are designing for it intentionally or just letting it happen. This is what this talk is about, and I'm going to share a practical framework and real examples from companies like Intercom, GitHub, and Stripe that had to rethink their products when AI agents became active users. Here is what we will cover. We'll first start with why this matters right now, with some data that might surprise you. Then I will introduce a mindset shift from thinking about users to thinking about actors, and three differences between how humans and agents interact with the product. From there, I will share a three-layer framework called the dual audience design lens, which has three layers: surface, structure, and strategy. Each layer gives your team something concrete to work with. Then we will look at three real world case studies, how Intercom discovered their CSAT metric was lying to them, um, and how GitHub built entirely new design primitives when Copilot became a coding agent, and how Stripe created a new financial primitive because AI agents cannot hold credit cards. We will wrap up with 5 questions you can bring to your team tomorrow and 3 things you can do this week. So you will leave with actionable insights. And my name is Nihal Kaul. I work at Revscale AI, where we think about this stuff every day. And let's get into it. So let's start with this. Your next power user won't be a human. Right now, across thousands of SaaS products, AI agents are already showing up in workflows, not as some future trend, but this is actually happening today. And think about it, in customer support, AI agents are reading documentation, they are triaging tickets, classifying them by urgency, and responding to customers before a human even logs into the dashboard. In procurement, bots are navigating B2B portals, comparing pricing across vendors, and submitting purchase orders without even a person being involved. And in design, co-pilots are pulling from component libraries, assembling screens, and generating variants based on usage data. And these are not edge cases. This is becoming the default way software gets used. Um, so why should we care? Why does this even matter right now? Because if your product is not designed with agents in mind, three things are probably already happening and you might not even realize it. Here's a stat that should make everyone in this room uncomfortable. In 2024, bot traffic surpassed human traffic for the first time. 51% of all web requests are now automated. That is more than half. First problem is agents break your UX. They skip onboarding flows, they ignore your modal dialogues, they click on things humans would never click on, and your carefully designed user journeys fall apart when the user cannot see on the screen. Second, they corrupt your data. Silent, repetitive errors pile up because there is no human noticing something looks off. Bad inputs get created at scale and nobody flags the problem. Third, and this one is sneaky, they distort your metrics. And from a real example, someone filtered bot traffic from a single Google Analytics property and reported sessions dropped by 42%. Users dropped by 48%. Almost half the signal was noise. So if you're making product decisions based on data like that, you're optimizing for ghosts. The mindset shift. So what do we do about this? So it starts with a reframe. We need to stop thinking about users and start thinking about actors in general. The old model is simple: user equals human. Everything we design assumes a person who can see the screen, read the copy, feel the friction. That model has served us well for decades, but not going forward. But the new model is different, and actor is anyone or anything that triggers actions in a product. That includes humans and it also includes agents. And here is the important part: these two types of actors have fundamentally different needs. They have different failure modes and different feedback signals. If you design only for one, you are leaving the other to break things. The three key differences, let me get specific. There are three differences that really matter in practice. First is intent expression, how humans browse, right? They explore, they click around to figure things out, they rely on visual cues and trial and error. On the other hand, agents call APIs directly with structured requests. Your user interface is a conversation with a human. Your API is a contract with an agent. Very different interaction models. Second is error handling. When something goes wrong, humans recover using context clues and visual hints. They read the error message and try something different. They try to work their way around it and see if that leads them to success. But agents fail silently or get stuck in loops. Think about that for a second. What does the word intuitive even mean when the user literally cannot see your interface, right? Um, so the third one is feedback loops. Humans complain, they write support tickets, they post on social media, they tell their friends. Agents just stop working. They do not complain. Your NPS score will never catch an agent that churned. It just disappears from your data and you have no idea why. So let's get into the dual audience design lens. This is the three-layer framework that I would like to introduce, which your team can start using this Monday. So there are three layers in the dual audience design lens, which I categorize them as surface, structure, and strategy. The goal is to give you something concrete your team can start using when you get back to work, and not just theory but practical insights that you can take and start implementing this week. The layer at the top is the surface. That's the first layer, and the question is simple: who is actually touching your product right now? The first step is an audit. Look at your current workflows and find where agents are already showing up, even when nobody planned for it. Um, Look for browser extensions that are auto-filling your forms, that are scraping your content. Look for integration platforms like Zapier that are making or consuming your webhooks, often set up once and completely forgotten about. AI assistants are summarizing your dashboards and reading your documentation. And here is the key question for your team. Can you tell the difference between a human session and an agent session in your analytics today? I believe most teams cannot, and that is exactly where you need to start. So start at layer one, which is a surface, and start with an audit. Layer two is structure. This is about designing for both consumption modes at the same time. Humans need scannability and visual hierarchy so they can find what matters quickly. They need progressive disclosure that reveals complexity only when they are ready. They need contextual help that meets them where they are. And whereas agents need structured, machine readable data with clear schemas, they need semantic markup and consistent labels so they know what each field means. They need predictable, stable patterns that do not change without versioning. But here is the interesting part: the overlap between these two sets of needs is bigger than you think. When you add clear labels, consistent structure, and accessible content to make things work for agents, humans benefit too. And good agent friendly design is often just good design. Layer 3 is strategy. This is where the framework becomes operational. Three concrete practices that you could add to your process right away. First, write agent user stories alongside your human one. So when you are in your design sprints, you are brainstorming with the product team. This is where this could come in very handy. Think of the generalized aspect that we brought in earlier. Think about just don't think about users which equals human, but think about actors in general, which could be human and agents. Something like, as an AI assistant, I need structured output, so I can summarize this for a user. Give these the same weight you give human stories in your backlog. Second is, you could create agent personas, just like you build human personas, you build agent ones. Define what permissions an agent type gets, how much autonomy it has, what guardrails keep it in check. Think about roles, scopes, failure modes, and escalation paths. Third would be to build observability around this. You want deep analytics and deep observability in instrumenting your product and analyzing what when an agent is using it versus a human. You want to track agent specific metrics like API call patterns, error rates, and throughput. These are all the metrics that would make more sense for agents. You cannot improve what you cannot measure. So building observability right into your platform would go a long way. I would like to introduce some real world examples. These are from real world case studies from these top product minded companies. Starting with Intercom first, a well-known customer support platform. These are not hypothetical examples. These are documented cases from companies that you know. Um, Intercom has a Fin AI agent, which is their automated AI customer support agent that started resolving over half of customer conversations automatically. It sounds like a success story, right? But they discovered their core metric was lying to them. Traditional CSAT surveys had response rates as low as 1 in 12 customers. The people who did respond skewed toward extreme opinions, and here is the kicker: customers scored AI support more harshly than human support. So when Intercom evaluated every conversation comprehensively instead of relying on surveys, they found something existing metric was they found something very surprising, which was that human agents actually scored 10% lower than CSAT suggested, and AI agents scored 14% better. So this metric was actually distorting the picture in both directions. They had to invent a completely new metric called CX score, which is customer success score, that evaluates every meaningful conversation, not just the ones where the customer fills out a survey after the conversation is completed. So the lesson is, your existing metrics were designed for a human-only world. When agents enter the picture, measurement systems break first, and you might want to start thinking from first principles. put your customers on the forefront and try to work yourself backwards from there and see whether these metrics still make sense. And when I say customers, be- which are generally users, and again going back to the general aspect of users are not equal to human, they are also agents now. um, the next example is from GitHub. GitHub had to invent entirely new UX patterns because AI became an active participant in developer workflows. Those dimmed inline code suggestions you see when you use Copilot, that ghost text was a deliberate design choice. They choose it over pop-ups because, as the design team put it, tiny distractions disturb developer flow. But the bigger shift came when they made Copilot a coding agent. Developers could now assign GitHub issues directly to Copilot like it is a team member, and the agent creates a branch, it writes the code, it pushes commits to a draft pull request, and assigns human reviewers. This is all being done autonomously. And think about the product design implications of that. They had to build guardrails. The agent can only push to branches it created. The person who triggered the agent cannot approve its pull request. Session logs exposed the agent's reasoning at every step. They even created configuration files inside repositories that only AI agents read. A whole new layer of information architecture. That's what GitHub came up with. And by March 2026, Copilot had completely 60 million code reviews, growing 10x in under a year. And the lesson is clear: the design you need to design the handoff, not just the automation. Build guardrails so agent action and human judgment work together with clear controls and complete transparency. The third and a very interesting example is from Stripe. I find fintech very, very intriguing, and because it is compliance heavy, highly regulated. This is a very tricky example, and I kudos to Stripe in the way that they pulled it off. Stripe created an entirely new financial primitive because AI agents cannot hold credit cards. And think about that, right? The entire trust model of commerce is built on the idea that processing a credential means you are authorized to use it. But when an agent acts on behalf of a user, trust cannot be inferred. It has to be explicitly granted, scoped, and enforced in code. That is a direct quote from Stripe's head of payments. Their solution was shared payment tokens, which are programmable tokens scoped to a specific business, limited by time and amount, revocable at any time. They also structured all their documentation as plain text markdown because AI agents can consume them efficiently. They can read efficient text using markdown format, and built an agent toolkit with restricted API keys. An agent can create payment links but not list customers. So these are all granular controls that are baked in. This already powers instant checkout in ChatGPT, where people can buy from Etsy sellers directly in conversation. So the lesson is agent-aware design is not just a UX problem; it is an architecture problem. Trust must be coded and not assumed. Some clear questions that your team should be asking right now. I would like to leave you with 5 questions. These are the conversations I think every product team should be having. Bring these back to your next product review or sprint planning session. One is, what percentage of our users are actually agents, and do we even know? And this could be this is easy to identify by baking in observability that we spoke about earlier. Second is, are our product metrics measuring human satisfaction or agent throughput? Another interesting question. The third one is, when an agent breaks our UX, whose bug is it? It's ours or it is theirs? Fourth is, are we designing guardrails or just hoping agents behave themselves? Um, and the last one is, what does onboarding look like when the user does not need a tutorial but needs a spec? Rather, it needs a technical spec such that it can understand your API contracts, the structure, the data, the underlying data structure that is in place, such that it can interact with the product in a much efficient manner. So these are the new product discovery questions for 2026 and beyond. They should sit right alongside who is your user and what problem are we actually solving. Some closing takeaways, and here is my closing thought. The products that win will be bilingual, fluent in human experience and agent interaction, not just API first, not just AI native, but genuinely designed for a world where every workflow might have a human and agent or both. Three things you could do this week. First one is audit. Go find where agents are already in your product. Check your API logs, your webhook consumers, your browser extension usage. I promise you will be surprised. You might have agents already inside your product. Second is add one agent persona to your next sprint. This is a good one to start with, a very good actionable insight. Just one, you can define its role, scope, failure modes, some guardrails, and one persona is enough to shift the conversation within your team. The third one is instrument. Start distinguishing human versus agent traffic in your analytics. This should be your baseline, and you cannot make informed product decisions without this data. It could also be the case that for certain products, in case of Stripe, GitHub, they have a lot of agent and bot activity on their platform than normal humans do, and these are the recent trends that we have been seeing recently. And lastly, um, thank you, everyone. That's it from me, and thank you for your time. If you want to continue this conversation, feel free to have ask questions. I would love to share and see what your team is thinking about. Yeah, and that's my LinkedIn if you would like to connect.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Nihal. That was a great kind of walkthrough of, well, for me, shocking the 51% stat. Like I didn't know that we had already passed the threshold of bot traffic. But yeah, as Nihal said, if you have any questions, please do write them in on whichever platform you're watching this on, and we'll put those questions through to Nihal. But I'm going to start with the first question. And I was kind of, as you were saying it, I was thinking, how will I be able to check in my logs that there's bot traffic? So there's some obvious ones when the bots are kind of declaring themselves. But what I think is happening, and what I've been seeing a lot, is people using tools like Playwright, or essentially they're getting the bots to open real browsers and do real clicks. Is there a way to identify that side of the bot traffic versus the kind of the robots that come in and scrape your site?
Yes, that's right. That's a really good question, and there is one way to do that, and which Playwright and a lot of these browser automation tools already provide. There is something called as browser fingerprinting, which can actually understand, and it can make out from and differentiate between agentic behavior than human behavior, because bot behavior won't be exactly like a human in the way that it takes a pause and it kind of explores the product or your website and takes certain actions, right? Because bot activity is rather scripted. So it goes into the product, it tries to look for certain fields. Let us say if a bot is trying to fill up a particular form, and there are certain fields, in the way that it types it, in the way that the text is being inputted inside these fields inside the form. So these frameworks like Playwright and other browser automation tools like Selenium also have a lot of capabilities that can differentiate between bot and a normal user behavior. And that is why a lot of these browsers, if you go deep into browser architectures, there are different strategies for this, and they have implemented browser fingerprinting strategies around this. So and a lot of these product review tools, like post hoc, for example, like they are bringing in new features that can help with this.
That's great. Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up. Are the analytics companies doing this, or does everybody have to figure it out themselves?
Yes, yes. So the analytics company is trying to stay one step ahead, and they have already started thinking around these lines, because there are a lot of companies that have started to in fact build products that are keeping the agents as their primary user base and not humans, which is very very interesting. And analytics companies are trying to bake this in. You talk about mixed panel, for example, and a lot of these large incumbents, they're thinking in this direction. A lot of large developer logging platforms like Datadog, for example, are also bringing in certain tools that can actually help you differentiate and kind of like uh, bring in that distinguish capabilities such that you can identify, okay, these actions were actually taken by a bot or a human.
Yeah, I can see that being incredibly valuable, as you were saying, because they're going to go different paths because they don't
Yeah.
behave the same.
Yes.
On your point about guardrails, one of the challenges I always have is kind of connected to what we just said there. Their behavior is likely going to be quite different to a traditional user's behavior on your platform. So how do you start thinking about it's always what I come up with, the unknown unknowns. If I'm not used to thinking in that way, how do I build effective guardrails?
Right. And I think here comes the point of thinking from first principles. So you keep your customer at the forefront, and you think like your customer could be an actor, right? It could be a human or it could be an agent. So we just keep it generalized. We just call them actors, who are actually your users of your product. And think about the general customers like humans, for an example. So certain things that you would not want humans to do within your product, the same things, same principles would apply to an agent. But for agents, it helps. It works differently because agent is not someone that who has a visible aspect of your product, but rather they're communicating with your product in certain through some certain API contracts, through a technical specification document. So you kind of need to have those guardrails, not from a UX perspective, but from a technical specification perspective, such that these are the rules that you can attain. These are the things that you could do, and these are the things that you cannot do. Like these are the things that the product doesn't have or doesn't allow you to do. So you kind of like build those guardrails around it, and you could create scopes. You could create certain escalation patterns that if the agent does certain things like this, you could identify that this is an agentic behavior, and you kind of try to stop that behavior right there. This is also very analogous to how Stripe created new tokens format, right, for agentic, because for agentic use cases, because agents cannot have credit cards, and in order for a human to have a credit card, there's a process behind it. You have a social security number, and you have credit bureaus that are doing a background check. But for agents, because it is a lot of there's a lot of programmatic involvement and communication. So Stripe came up with these new type of tokens for agents, and they have scopes, roles, and these escalation pathways and guardrails baked into the tokens itself. So if an agent has assumed a particular token, the agent will only work with the guardrails, the scopes, and the rules that are defined in that specific token.
I think I heard the CEO of Box, he made a similar one because for SaaS products, they're worried because one user could probably do the work of 100 people if you spin up 100 agents.
Right.
But it's that permission bit that he's saying that where they're going is they're creating special users that have limited or much tighter permission sets. And that's how they're hoping to get past this SaaS apocalypse.
Right.
It's a good point, though, for people out there. Just think, is there a different user category that you could have in your product that you could then monetize that if you're worried about your per user monetization strategy being wiped away?
Right.
Excellent. That actually brings us to time, but I really found that very interesting. I love the bit of, I guess it's just starting to think now, because I don't think everybody is about the bot being a user or the agent being a user. And I think that traffic is going to increase very quickly. So as you said, it's high already, but I don't know, from what I'm seeing, I think it's going to go exponential.
Yes.
So it's right to get started on it. So thank you once again, Nihal.
Thank you, Rory. Thanks for having me. Thanks.
And that brings us to an end for today. But if you did enjoy the session, please do consider joining us at one of our main conferences. We have one coming up in New York in May, and also towards the end of May in Berlin. There'll be 40 speakers, 8 workshops, 500 attendees at each. And what we do is we bring product, UX, design, and dev together, because in this new kind of AI sped up world, it doesn't matter how quickly you build something if you build the wrong thing. And that's where it takes a team of cross-functional experts to do it. So please do consider joining us at that. But if not, I look forward to seeing you at the next UXDX Online. And I just want to say thank you once again to our 2 speakers, Julianna and Nihal. Thank you very much.